Good day, everybody. Today is March 29th. It is 3:43 p.m. Standard Time. In today's article, uh, I'm going to read you blurbs of it. I have the entire contents of it, but I'm not going to show it because it could be considered copyright material. But I'm going to read out some blurbs, but just want to show you here that this article's real. Headline: Saudi Arabia moves closer to joining. This is the key here. Chinese Security Club. Okay. So let's first talk about Davos. We know about Davos and the WEF. I'm now leaning that is all pretty well controlled by China. So this could be the new replacement private that we won't know about, administered, control, and implemented by China. Okay. So let's get into the article found here on FT.com. So Saudi Arabia takes step forwards to a Chinese-led security and trade club. So this is now a new bloc. We know about BRICS: Brazil, Russia, India, China. So this one is administered by China. Okay. Um, so this is Beijing's push for influence in the Middle East gathers momentum. Okay. So when we look at the world regions, be it Europe, I've already read all the new laws that they're proposing on crypto and regulating you. I've not talked about any of the social or political on any of that. In my mind, it's not positive for the region. We know about what's going on in both Canada and US regarding the restrictions there and the social political there. Okay, I'm not gonna, we all know about that, so I ain't gonna get into that. And then we have Asia, predominantly pushed and driven by China. So what China's done last weekend, and you can look it up. Actually, I'll pull up some interesting things about it. So here is called the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So if I go over to the good old Google machine, or let's just put it here. So we got the Shanghai. Let me just copy this. Hang on. All right. So in here, we are going to look at what this is. So this is China, Russia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan. If you don't know any of these, call them stand countries. These countries are building a lot of wealth and they have a lot of natural resources that the West would love to have. Look at what has happened. Now it's expanded to India, Pakistan. Okay. So India, population, largest democracy in the world, and Pakistan as well. Okay. So now they're now pushing into Middle East. Okay. So when I said Europe, North America, we'll just call it, and it's kind of economic demise with the debt, social, all that. Okay. Same in Europe. Uh, I think South America, Central America has a lot of potential, but they're not mentioned here. With the, I don't know, maybe Brazil procures a huge player because they have, again, natural resources that China wants, right? So the supreme SEO body is the council's heads of state, which decides upon the priorities and activities and interaction of the organization. So that's clearly China, right? The CCP, China, the Chinese Communist Party, right? Um, and yeah, it started here in 2017. Uh, so when is the Shanghai Cooperative Organization Summit? As far as I know, they just had it or something similar last weekend. And how do I know? Um, okay, so this, I guess, is the website. Let's see here. I didn't know why India was part of this. That makes it worse for the West. Um, Okay, so here they are, Shanghai Cooperation. Uh, let's see here. Okay. Um, UNESCO's looks like it's involved. Anyway, so let's talk about some corporations from the States that went to this. Okay, this is how we know. Okay, so Apple CEO Tim Cook went. Okay, so look at that headline, March 25th, 4 days ago. This is why I don't like this company, Apple. I will not use any Apple products anymore. Praises China's innovation and long history of cooperation on Beijing visit. So he was there on March 25th. So why did he go there? It's for this summit driven and hosted by China. And apparently 180 countries went to this summit. Okay. And yes, that's it. Cook is in Beijing to attend the China Development Forum. Okay. So this is now the new WEF, I would think, or this other one I was going on about. But it's the same government organized event being held again in full force after the country ended its COVID control. So look at the companies that are also involved. Include CEOs, Pfizer and BHB. I wonder about this company, the big medicine company. Okay. Does that raise any alarm bells? This one's obvious because they're a large mineral and resource base, and they know their biggest customer is going to be China. So they'll do whatever it takes to keep China happy. Of course, right? Innovation developing rapidly in China and believe it will accelerate. Also, just so you know, I do know Ray Dalio went to this thing as well. Um, so there's this. This is what happened last weekend. Many people don't know that. But let's go back to our other article. Okay, so this is another key. Now, this is the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So, other Middle Eastern states, such as Qatar and Egypt, which, like Saudi Arabia, have close military ties to Washington, but now they're going into the arms of China. When Xi met Saudi Arabia, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman in Riyadh, he hailed a new era in Beijing relationship with the Gulf. 2 months after the December meeting, Beijing brokered a deal to restore diplomatic relations between Saudi Arabia and its regional rival Iran. So they created a peace deal potentially between the two former enemies of Iran and Saudi. So this is the stuff that U.S. used to do, which is not happening. So now the global influence is China. Um, so that's all fine and good. So here's the concern I would have as a Westerner, especially being a political leader, whatever you want to call it. When you get the Mid East now moving towards China, I will tell you the wealth right now in all the global regions I talked about, North America, Europe, and China, Asia, but I didn't mention Middle East. And the Mid East is easily the fastest, youngest, wealthiest region in the world. Okay, that's including Dubai, duh, Qatar, duh, UAE. It's all driven by in the olden days by oil. So they know oil is going to be declining in demand long term. So what they do, they diversify into other industries, economies. Dubai is a great example because it's tourism, free tax zone, uh, real estate development is going on like crazy, and it's growing like a big weed. And it's becoming like a new New York. It's like becoming like a new Switzerland, what Switzerland used to be, and they're neutral between the Russia invasion and the U.S. So they're playing neutral. Sounds like Switzerland to me. And as a result, their wealth builds. So they'll get money uh, from both Russia, India, and probably Africa as well. Now Europe, and it's all getting poured into places like uh, Bahrain, Qatar, and UAE. And then people go, well, it's a tyranny because it's run by some uh, Arab Muslim family. Well, I wouldn't call it that because if you're being taxed where you live, that's another way of saying you're ruled as well. Okay, as I put on my Facebook, why are you being taxed when a central bank authority where you live is able to print unlimited amount of money? And if they're able to do that, why are they taxing people, right? So that's a form of control, no different than a tyranny that people complain about when it comes to Dubai and the rest of the Mid East, right? But if you don't look at it that way, it's an opportunity to prosper in a democracy with no tax, very little tax. And that region is pretty well driven by industry and fees that a lot of these building developers have to pay out. I'm assuming that's their biggest resource, as well as oil and natural gas as well. So there is that. So if you don't believe what I'm trying to tell you, that's a simple thing. So let me go over the Google machine, okay? And let's put in wealthiest uh, country uh, by per capita. Okay, let's see what comes up. So per capita, that means what are the wealthiest countries by wealth? Okay, so these are the wealthiest people per capita, meaning with each person in that country. So let's see how we look. Okay, so who's number one? Qatar, 128,000 per capita. Okay, so this is 2017. I don't know where it's at now. It doesn't matter. But the point is, when you get a country like Qatar or Qatar, I don't know, Qatar, that's how I pronounce it. Um, that right there, and they're moving towards China. That's wealth going to China. That's not wealth going to Europe and the West, Europe, North America, let's say. And that means that that wealth is foreign investment being now poured not instead of the West or North America, that's being poured now into China because they're aligning, right? And look who else we got. Singapore, uh, as I said, UAE, that's Dubai, Kuwait. Okay. So I can talk easily about these top 10 countries. You have Luxembourg, that's pretty well a tax free small country where that's all built around corporations being there. Very wealthy country. Singapore, the same. Brunei, I'm kind of surprised by Brunei. I can't explain Brunei. Ireland, all due to, again, because they have corporate structures where Apple, Google, no, Apple and other pretty well off big companies are technically headquarter or the parent company is in Ireland because they have corporate structures where they're very low in tax. So that's where a lot of the big corporations hide out. Where, for example, Apple will have a parent company that owns all of the rights of Apple technology, being iPad, Mac, iPhone, the whole nine yards. Those licenses are owned by the parent company out of Ireland. Okay. So the corporate structure enables that. So when you have Apple in anywhere in other countries in the world, they're now subsidiaries of the Irish parent company of Apple in Ireland. So how it works is when Apple wants to do research and development, it's an expense. So now the company in the US could be technically a money loser and it lowers their tax, right? So then they are now licensing what's developed out of the US, goes back and is owned by the Irish company of Apple. And that Apple parent company in Ireland is now earning money from Apple in the US as a licensing fee to use and implement Apple technology created in the US. And Apple, the US, has to pay now a licensing fee to the Apple Ireland company. And that's how they pay low tax. And many companies do that. If it's not based out of Ireland, it could be based out of the Netherlands. Okay. That's why Ireland is up there. UAE, I already talked about that. Kuwait, oil, and lots of very, very wealthy families there in Kuwait. Switzerland, obviously, but you can see how fast they've declined because even the UAE, Dubai, is higher now than Switzerland. So Switzerland um, is no longer what it used to be. Okay. I just got somebody sent me a tweet about how the pension system, they want to cut $1 billion from the Swiss pension because, well, we just paid out how many billions for Ukraine and how many billions have we backed as a backstop for Credit Suisse? Over 100 billion. So now the pension system of the ultra wealthy Switzerland now takes that economic hit in their pension fund. So they're on the decline. San Marino, they're basically a tax haven for wealthy Italians, right? That's San Marino in the Italian Alps. Norway, most likely, there's two big reasons, and they're very similar to the Mideast. You have Norway, obviously because of oil. And other big thing that they did very, very, very intelligently is to start a sovereign fund, like a global, or sorry, a wealth fund for Norway for retirees. So that's like a retiree pension for Norwegians. And I will tell you, it's very well run. How do I know? Okay, let me tell you. When Porsche did its IPO, okay, there were the initial allocate or capital allocators to get the first round of Porsche on the IPO. Who was participating in that? Well, Qatar was number one, and the Norwegian sovereign fund was the other. And that's why these countries have built up this wealth. Okay, just so as an educational standpoint, Hong Kong, and then you followed by the U.S., Iceland, da 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 da, and good old Canada way down here because we're the peasants of the first world. Um, in UK, where is UK? Yeah, they're right there. It's even worse than Canada. Okay, so again, this is the decline of the wealthy per capita in the West. That right there, raw data, worldometer. I don't I don't write this stuff. Okay, I'm just giving you what I'm seeing. So basically, what it is, lists countries ranked by GDP at purchasing power parity per capita, along with nominal GDP per capita. Okay, so PPP, if you've heard the analogy, how much if I'm living here in Canada, how much would a McDonald's Big Mac cost me in US dollars? How much would that same Big Mac cost me in US? How much will it cost me in US for a Big Mac in UK? How much will that Big Mac cost me in Switzerland? That's PPPP, right? Relative cost of living rather than only using exchange rates. So currency is not a part of this. It's using the economy domestically of these countries and using a consistent measuring stick on how wealthy they are comparatively across the board here. So again, these are the wealthy, wealthy, wealthy countries, right? Don't shoot the messenger, please. All right, so we know that the Mid East is very wealthy. Out of just top 10 here, we've got Kuwait, number one, number two, UAE, and Qatar, right? So out of those top 10, three are in the top 10, and that's back in 2017. And I'm sure there might be uh, Saudi is on the rise. Why not? So these Middle Eastern Gulf region countries are very, very important to China because that's where the wealth is. Where the wealth is, that's where the foreign investors are to pour money back into whatever China wants to do economically in China, or if there's part of their belt, what do they call it, their belt and whatever on their projects to. I mean, China is very smart here, and the U.S. dwindling on this list, and they're probably a lot higher. Let me see if I can see GDP per capita. Update it to 2022. Okay, let's see that. Okay, so this is by country 2023. Let's see what it is. Because this matters. All right, so here's the new list. Highest GDP per capita, Switzerland, Ireland. Okay, Bermuda would make sense. It's a Caribbean tax haven. Same with Luxembourg, Liechtenstein. Switzerland's still up there. Norway, U.S., Iceland, and Denmark. So no more Qatar. All right. So 10 countries the lowest. Okay. So let's see here. We've got Monaco, Liechtenstein, Bermuda, Ireland, Norway, Cayman. That makes sense. Again, a tax haven. Uh, yeah. So we have Qatar. Uh, oddly enough, Greenland. Um, and looks like do I retract what I'm saying here? No. Um, because when you look at uh, these regions are still a very important play in the world uh, for in terms of wealth. Okay, so I talked about 2017, and yeah, it just shows you countries that are still up there, like the tax havens for the Cayman. What else is it? Bermuda. That's pretty obvious. Qatar, I'm surprised, has actually dropped down. That might be because of the value of oil. I don't know. U.S. is still hanging in there for its country, but it's definitely not up there as it should. But again, you can see it's all done in U.S. dollar and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, it's very, very important to understand that Mid East is still a very wealthy region in the world that China wants. And from what I've seen, that's where a lot of the new wealth for the common person is. Um, and that's it. So it's pointing towards the US, or if that was the case when it comes to the US and the rise of Bermuda, Cayman Islands, that's money basically being funneled out of the US because of the same reasons as I explained, um, with the social, political, and the new tax regimes, and eventually the CBDC. So the wealthy, from my interpretation on this for this year, why it's happening, that's money escaping and moving out of the US into these tax havens, US and sorry, Cayman Islands and Bermuda. That's all I can explain. The other one is with Liechtenstein and Luxembourg. That's probably the tax havens for Europe. Okay. And then we have, again, Ireland's still up there based upon corporate structure. Switzerland, as I said before, we talked about Norway, why these make sense. Now, in terms of Iceland, I'm kind of surprised it's higher than Singapore. Maybe it's low population, but it's not a poor country, Iceland, and so on and so forth. Netherlands probably up there because of the same similar corporate structure that Netherlands kind of pushes. But you're not seeing Germany up there. You're not seeing Canada up there. Not even seeing Finland, Australia. You're seeing like Australia's still doing okay, but majority of the cash is in these regions, in the tax regions, tax-free regions, or tax-friendly. Monaco, Liechtenstein, Luxembourg. That's corporate. That's personal wealth in these tax-free or low-tax regions. Now, China most likely won't be able to attract those folks. As an industry, they don't have a lot, but the East does. And that's why China is very influential there. So essentially, what I'm saying is that the money is already escaping from these countries, okay? Especially because they're no longer in the top 10. They're moving, or at least I can say the Western countries are declining, but yet there's all these traditional tax havens that are moving up because wealth from the legacy Western countries are moving into these tax friendly or tax, low tax, no tax regions, the old tax havens. And I don't know how the corporate structure works. I don't know how these people are able to live. They're probably completely out of the US. And all the other Western countries I already talked about, you can see them decline. Okay. So that's what's happening. China may not be able to get influence on those countries, but they definitely have an influence where Saudi and the rest of the Mideast is moving towards China. And eventually that means their currencies will move towards China, and then China will have an absolute huge influence on the global economy of control. And as the rest of the West still continues, unfortunately, because of the political social upheaval going on. I have my theories on that, why, but I'm not going to say on good old traditional social media. But it's happening, okay, and money is leaving these countries. So, um, yeah, it's and that how that impacts us little people in these countries like in my case, Canada, U.S., Europe, whatever. More control, more control. Our standard of living declines, and more tax and so forth. You know what I'm talking about. And just the regular social, less social cohesion is probably the better way to put it, and less civil society. We're already seeing over the last few years, right? So I'm not going to say any more on this. But yeah, China's having a huge impact on a lot of this. You're seeing in the headlines now, but once you start getting the Mideast pivot, and we haven't even talked about Turkey as well. Turkey's another big one as well. Lots of that's a big economic player, and they're kind of in the balance like Dubai is between the Russia over Ukraine and the disputes, the global disputes between Russia and the West over what's happened with Ukraine. And I haven't gone into that either. So we'll leave it at that. Again, if you want to know more about this sort of stuff, you might want to get on my email list. If I can get it right here, quantlabs.net/books. Get a free PDF showing how you can earn money. Another thing I've not mentioned in this video, in my prior video, you're already losing money. If the US dollar declines, that means you're holding relatively across the world. Your dollar goes down, your savings go down, your earning power declines on a global level. That's how it is. That's how it seems. Sorry, but we shall talk to you later. Have a good day.